Hello and welcome to the 4th of July episode of Sell It Like Samina. Today we are doing this podcast where I'm here with other visionary Bangladeshi women and we are here to talk about our successful journeys in our own fields. And to moderate this panel, we have Naila Chowdhury. Naila is not only my partner in our foundation called Women for Empowerment, but she's also a transformational leader. Her expertise are women's economic empowerment, financial inclusion, peace builder, social impact leader, human rights, change maker, social entrepreneur, UN SDG ambassador.
Thank you, Samina. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Welcome to our panel, A New Path Forward. Today we have three extraordinary visionary women leaders who are originally from Bangladesh. They'll share their unique American journey. Our speakers are inspiring, ambitious, motivating, passionate, and experts in their own fields. While celebrating their success, let us not forget we women still have a long way to go to create gender equity and equality. We are going through a challenging time in the post-COVID era. Times like these require immense dedication, leading both ourselves and others consciously with our head, heart, and wisdom. Without further ado, I'll briefly introduce the speakers before I move on to the questions, starting with Anushay Hossain. Anushay, welcome. She's a journalist and a feminist policy analyst. She's a regular on-air guest at CNN, MSNBC, and PBS. And her writing on politics, gender, and race has been published in Forbes, CNN, US Today, The Daily Beast, and much more. Hossain is also the host of the Spilling Chai podcast. She is also an author. Her first book is The Pain Gap, and we are excited to hear more about it.
This is the only time I'll do this.
She's indeed a transformational leader and a change maker. Then we have Samina Chowdhury. With over 20 years of experience, Samina Chowdhury is a top producer in Maryland and has been featured in Forbes, Baltimore Real Producers, Yahoo Top 100 magazine, and won many prestigious awards in the real estate industry. She's a highly respected and a very successful million-dollar agent with the Lucido team. Recently, she was a part of a panel discussion in Dubai and a keynote speaker in a conference in Vegas, and currently working on her TED Talk. She speaks 5 languages, wow. And having traveled the world to understand different cultures, she's highly driven to give clients a top-notch experience of service. Her one-liner is, I help my clients see how their culture and heritage fits into today's American homes. She's a philanthropist who is keenly focused on women and girls' economic empowerment, dignity, equity, and sustainability. Then we have amazing Anita Bandy, an attorney by profession who's an outstanding advisor for corporations, financial services companies, boards and their board committees on matters involving the Securities and Exchange Commission and other US and international law enforcement agencies. Above everything, she's a compassionate leader whose work has left a deep positive impact on many lives. Anushay, Samina, and Anita, I'm humbled and delighted to be here with you all today.
Pleasure is all ours. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Pleasure, definitely. Is.
Thank you.
As transformation leaders, women empowerment ambassadors, and change makers, what inspired you most to be what you are today? Please share your purpose and calling. Let's start with Samina.
I would say I have a huge shoe to fill when it comes to achievement. My father is currently a businessman and one of the top businessmen in Bangladesh, and he was also the Secretary of State, which in our country is called the Foreign Minister. Mm-hmm. And I have grown up watching his achievements, and so as far as career is concerned, I first moved to this country when I was in college, and I got married while I was a student and started my family, and the career path came later. but the student life and the married life went parallel with each other.
Which you did fantastic.
Yeah, and when I look back today, I don't know how I achieved it.
You have it inside you.
We all do.
All of us, yeah.
Yeah. So after my studies, I took a break, did a little bit of freelance. I got a degree in interior design, did some freelance work while my kids were young. Once they started going to school, I had more time in hand, and that's when I thought, okay, I'll get my real estate license and start selling homes. That took to another level slowly, and here I am today.
Oh boy, and you're one of the stars.
Indeed.
And Anita, would you like to go?
Absolutely, Nyla, and thank you so much for moderating, and Samina for bringing us all together, and Anushay, somebody that I've known for decades and watched evolved into a powerhouse. I'm so privileged and lucky to be amongst this esteemed panel, so thank you. But going to your question, Nyla, you know, my story is a little different. I was born here. I'm a first-generation American. My parents were immigrants from Bangladesh. In fact, my father came right before the war started. He came here on a Ford Foundation scholarship to pursue higher studies right after being a newlywed. The plan was that my mom was going to join him, you know, shortly thereafter, and then the war broke out. They were actually separated for several years. My mom had to flee Dhaka University, take refuge in her ancestral town, wait out the war. Meanwhile, my father was here, starting his immigrant path, and given the war, it just completely changed his trajectory. He decided to stay here, forge a life. My mother eventually joined him, and I think from a very young age, I witnessed my parents overcome many challenges that required an understanding of the law. You know, whether it's trying to get a valid visa, converting your student visa to a valid visa to stay in this country, navigating the healthcare system when they didn't have insurance as students, you know, being passed over for promotions because of your religious or ethnic background. And I watched, you know, the fact that if my parents knew the law, they knew how to communicate in the language of the law, be advocates for themselves, they could have used it as a powerful tool to overcome these challenges. They didn't have it at the time. It took them a lot longer. They had to struggle more. But I think it ingrained in me that, you know, that I want my life to be easier. I want to be my own advocate. I want to be able to leverage what the law has to offer so that I don't have to be faced with those types of challenges. And so I think from a young age, I was always very focused on the law because of those struggles. So I ended up in law school, you know, ended up in big law, a very big multinational law firm in New York City, was, you know, top of the world, except for the fact that as a minority woman, with being the first lawyer in the family, having no mentors, I was sort of in a big law firm, making a lot of money, but I was kind of bouncing in a vortex, not having any idea of how to specialize, how to focus, what I wanted to do, until a very senior, powerful partner in the firm mentored me, took me in, took a chance on me.
That's amazing.
He was a former federal prosecutor, a very senior official from the Securities and Exchange Commission, introduced me to his world. And I was fascinated immediately. I was immediately taken by how strong the U.S. capital markets are, our market efficiencies, the fact that investors have confidence in our markets, and that's why we're innovative. And no other country has ever been able to replicate the strength of our economy. And partly that's because of the Securities and Exchange Commission, because it's the gold standard of market regulation. And so I fell in love with the field. Partner then did what all good leaders do. He told me, this goes against my self-interest, but if this is what you want to do, you need to give up big law money. You need to give up working for me, take a risk, go to government, forge your path there, because companies and executives are not going to trust you if you don't have that credibility. So I took a risk. I gave up the financial security of being in a big law firm, and started at the Securities and Exchange Commission as a line attorney, a line prosecutor. Eventually, you know, rose through the ranks, stayed there for 17 years. I initially went there with a 2-year plan. 17 years went by in a blink of an eye. The rest is history. I became a senior officer. I was the first Bangladeshi Muslim to be a senior officer at the agency in the agency's history.
Amazing.
So I would say that, my inspiration is watching my parents' immigrant struggle, inspiration from a mentor who took a chance on me, and taking a risk, taking a bet on myself. Was my
You've done
story.
remarkable.
Yeah.
Such an inspirational story.
Seriously, I'm about to
Amazing.
cry.
But you know what? This sort of tells me a bit about. I think I rose because my mentor allowed me
Yes.
to, and
And
moved to
exactly.
give me space.
Yeah, yes.
That's an amazing thing, and we have to also find out the right mentors.
That's
right.
yes.
That's
Seeking it out.
Seeking it out, yeah.
Seeking it out. That's amazing.
Both Anita and I, we throughout our career, we seeked help of mentors who
So
guided
important.
us to the next level, and we are still getting guided by mentors in each level of service.
That is such an
So
important point.
it's very important to have mentors to guide you and to see the vision that you have, the dream that you have, and help you achieve it. And this is a country where I feel, as me as first generation immigrant, Anita watching her parents as first generation immigrants, having that dream, and being able to have mentors to understand the dream and help us guide through the process of achieving them. That is huge. And I would say that we
Absolutely.
should encourage every generation after us that get the help, because it really makes a
You can
difference.
never do it alone.
Yes, you
Yeah,
can't.
and this is
Exactly.
a country where you work hard and it pays off.
Yes, yes.
And dedication and in your field and in having integrity, that is what creates your identity.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I remember being a little girl in Bangladesh and hearing about how Samina Appa is doing amazing in real estate. And I was like, wow, she's working in America? So when I was growing up, I have kind of a similar background to Samina Appa, because we were both born into such high-profile, big families in Bangladesh. And it's interesting that I have a career and that I'm working, because nobody ever expected me to or told me to. When you
Actually, both of us.
Yeah, both of us. And we know
We
this.
both have
yes. And all the Bangladeshis watching will know, obviously our fathers are very good friends and we're old family friends. But when you have such a figure, I mean, it's amazing and such a privilege and honor, but it's huge. That identity becomes an accomplishment. Nobody ever asked me growing up who I was. They always said, who's your father?
Same.
Oftentimes knowing who your father is. I loved coming to America, and nobody asked me that. And I don't think anybody cared. Nobody asked me that once. And it really allowed me to
And
be
now
my own
Uncle,
person.
now Uncle
And
is
shine.
saying, now Uncle is saying, do you know my daughter?
Yes.
But that all being said, my parents played such a huge, huge role. The person who inspired me for everything is my mom. I mean, by her example, by teaching me the concept of hard work, how when no one expects anything from you, it's actually a huge advantage. Being good in school, taking your studies seriously. Everything your parents say is right.
Yeah.
You will find that out later. They're always right.
When you become parents.
When you become parents. And now I'm like, watching my daughter, telling her what to do, but watching her go the other way. So I think that is really what inspired me. My father was, I really feel like visionary and revolutionary with his attitude towards girls' education. I cannot believe he, at a time when really girls in Bangladesh, even from very high privileged families, it wasn't, who had the financial resources, they would just marry their girls off. Girls got married after high school. And then it started becoming a trend to educate your daughters, but then they got really educated and became super educated housewives, which isn't something bad, but not something that everybody wants to do. So I think my greatest privilege has been my education, and access to such good education has been so important. I felt like when I got to UVA from Bangladesh, I first came to America as an international student. I realized so many of my American peers would skip class. And I never understood that. I was like, we have the best teachers are here, and well, how could you want to skip class? I thought that was crazy. I mean, I definitely didn't have dushtami, but I didn't understand why you were in college to not go to class. And even now my college roommates make fun of me because I always went after class to the professor and introduced myself. But I've kept these relationships because learning is so important. And I think being the youngest, I've gotten to see, one of my biggest advantages has been to see women like Samina and Anita. When I first met Anita in Arlington Courthouse with her Gucci sunglasses, and she was a high-profile lawyer, I had never seen a Bangladeshi woman like this. I was like, this is amazing. I want to be her. And she was like talking about the law. I was like, wow, I didn't know that you could do that. And then when I graduated from UV and started working in Washington, Anita always saw me. She was like, that, you know, the organization that I was working for at the time, you were like, that's a great organization. Your boss is a powerhouse. Like, you know,
that encouragement.
It's so much encouragement, and
I know
it means
a star
so
when
much.
I see it.
And you know, this is very uncommon in our.
It's very uncommon.
To support, to be
encourage,
able
hold
to
hands,
have that support and encouragement
And
from
have an
other
example.
leaders,
Absolutely.
Other
be able-
women.
and be able to
Yeah.
have that encouragement and go to the next level.
Yeah.
You know, and push
Shruti,
each
really.
other.
Yeah.
That you know, go forward. We are here with you.
Yeah, I think our daughters are so lucky. I always say this to Ava. I'm like, look at the TV shows you have, or look at these Bangladeshi women in America
Yeah.
that you get to see, you know. So
And the other thing that you and I both have in common, Anushay, is that our parents worked hard to give us an education where we didn't have student debt.
Yeah.
In this country, that is huge.
Right.
yes,
Yeah, and to be able to appreciate
that is
that,
a huge advantage. Yeah.
to
That's a
be
privilege.
able to
Right.
it's a privilege to
It's
be
a
able to
privilege.
appreciate that, and you know, tell our parents that, hey,
Yeah.
you have given me this education. I have a degree thanks to you,
Yes.
and this is what I want to do with the degree I have.
Yes.
And you know, have this career
yes.
today.
Yes.
That's so true.
That is so true. And I really have to quickly say something that I never realized before I came to America, is how important how you speak English in America is. My father was, when we were growing up, he would always say how important the American accent was. And I didn't understand why, because, you know, I went to the American school in Bangladesh, so I was just always surrounded by it. But when I came to America, people were so impressed that I didn't have an accent and that I spoke American. They were like, but you're not American? It was like this big thing. And then I realized what my dad was saying, because when he was studying in Georgetown in the early 80s, he had to experience so much racism because of how he spoke English, or because he had an accent. And he told me it's not being able to speak English in any language. It's so important.
Yeah.
It's the accent, even if you're going to learn French or Italian. So I felt like that was such wisdom.
Yes.
I think about it a lot. He was so right.
I think we're constantly trying to balance that sort of cultural integration,
Yeah.
where people give you a chance, but also hang on to your identity that distinguishes
Yes.
you. It's a constant balancing
It
act,
is,
you know,
constantly.
and how much to share and how much to be proud of where you come from, right?
Yes.
And I think we all
And
kind
be
of find
able
that.
to get that guidance from our parents today, that they're still alive and giving us the guidance to move forward in life.
their
You know,
wisdom.
we're
Yeah.
blessed to have that.
Yeah, their
That's very
wisdom,
true.
really,
Yeah.
really. And
What they have achieved.
Shruti.
Yeah.
And it's something that I always feel like, and I think you'll understand, this is like therapy. It's going to become a therapy session. Something if I really guess this is that we were always, I don't know, I was always kind of made to feel like a defensive of my family. It's like you have all this, well, everything of hers is from her father. Always. You go to the bathroom, it's because your dad got you there. You go to college, or her dad set it up, or her dad got her that job. And so for a really long time, I didn't like that, you know. So I became like fiercely independent. I'd never tell anybody who my dad was in the States. And now I have started saying, people will be like, oh, well, where are you from, or who's your family? And I'll be like, you know what? I come from a really high-profile political family in Bangladesh.
You're proud of it.
And
Yeah.
now I'm proud of it.
Yeah.
But my husband was telling me that I can say it now because I feel like I'm also my own person. And I dedicated my book to my grandfather. And every time I open my book, I feel so proud because I never wanted to say that before that. Manik Myanmar Dada. And now I'm like, yes, he is. And he was a writer too. And that was such a huge loss in my life to not be able to talk journalism and politics with him.
Have that pride.
But to embrace it now, I'm like, yeah, I am. So what? I'm Nurse Munjurman.
Right. Which is such a different experience from sort of the background from which I approach things, because my parents were much more the immigrant struggle, where I wanted to make them proud for all of their sacrifices. Right? They didn't have it so easy. They would have in Bangladesh, but sort of setting roots in a new country, building something, you sort of have to start from scratch in this country.
Yeah.
And so I think I always wanted to make my father proud, so he can say that, look, I stayed in this country, I made sacrifices, and look at my daughter, it all paid off. That was always sort of in the back of my mind.
You basically inherited their dream.
Yes.
Yeah. Amazing.
I think that's right. And I think that's right.
Mm-hmm.
So
you also embody like the star child every immigrant wants.
My God.
Go to America, become a lawyer.
I would second that.
Which is kind of unique, because you weren't spoiled. You're only child,
right,
but you're not spoiled, and you were taught to achieve.
I think the negative part
instilled in you.
I think that's right. I think the negative part of being an only child was I had super overprotective parents who never wanted to take a risk in terms of having me be too adventurous, because they would always say to me, "We don't have any extras." Yeah. but you're right. I mean, I think that there's a value system that they imbibed in me that I grew up with, in terms of. I think even now, even though, we're sort of at a stage in our lives where we have much more financial freedom, I think the fact that I saw all of their immigrant struggles keeps us in check. We're not overly indulgent.
Mm-hmm.
We still make our kids take out the garbage. My son is going to get a summer job as a camp counselor. I want them to always have that immigrant struggle mentality, because it keeps you in check, and those values, I think, are what I think how I approach life. That you want to keep things measured, you want to be balanced in your life, because I witnessed that. Sometimes I worry, because with our generation, with the second generation, they get everything too easily.
Yes.
It's important to let them know that you come from a very rich heritage.
Yes.
And you are also first generation American, or in your case, you are the first generation American telling your kids they're second generation. But to tell them that, you can take the best of both worlds and make it your own.
Yeah.
Every culture has its positive and negative, but, you take the good from both culture and make it your own.
That's right.
So true.
And, take it from there and be proud. Sometimes my kids do ask me that, Mom, how can you be so proud with ease of where you come from? I said, it's just natural. It just comes naturally to me.
So true.
But all the points you all have been discussing, it's so valuable for our viewers, especially the new immigrants and people who are struggling still. And honestly, I have to add, because I came in very late. I used to come and visit every year for a long time, but my children studied here and settled, and I came in very late. And at that point, like Anushay said, I didn't study here, but I've studied in Sweden, and then my work took me to 10 countries, but still I felt that, oh my God, I don't speak American. So like, how do I get in? But honestly, nobody held my hand. It's for others. If you can make it. I've made it at a very late age, but still you can. This is a place where people can make their dreams come true. You have to have the integrity, determination, resilience.
Yes.
And you have to know yourself to feel comfortable in your own skin.
That's right.
Right.
Because that's the authenticity.
Yeah.
Yes.
And people do accept you for what you are. And I have felt in a lot of circumstances where I made myself feel comfortable, and then I saw people accepting me. So it's just that not always expecting people will welcome, but how you welcome them also into the inner circle, how you include people where people feel comfortable to include you in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Absolutely.
And you know what? All the cheesy things become true. Be your authentic self. Be yourself. People respond to it, and it comes across. And even if you're smart or employed or uneducated, people know when you're not being authentic.
Yeah.
People pick it up.
There's no
it's in your
comparison to
energy.
genuine being you.
And I think what your kids were saying, where do you come from? It's called confidence.
Yes.
And you don't have to choose either or. This took me forever to learn. It can be both.
Yeah.
And I think bit of education, upbringing, values, everything together builds it up. And I always say that it's the dignity inside. Nobody can take it away from you.
Yeah.
You're born with it and how you cultivate it.
I think that's so true. I also think that there's no shortcuts, right?
Mhm.
All of
Yes.
us are here where we are because of hard work.
Yes,
Oh.
absolutely.
And we all had to start from scratch. And these days, this is where I'm going to show my age. You see a lot of people in the younger generation, they just want to network for the purpose of networking.
Yes.
And, thinking that there's a shortcut. If you go to drinks or coffee with somebody that's important, that's going to get you to your goal. And, I often reflect on my career path. There's really no shortcut in terms of your hard work
No.
and dedication,
No.
letting your
Oh my
work
God.
speak
No.
for itself. And when you do build up your network, you have to nurture and give back to your network.
Yes.
It's not
Yes.
just about
It's not just take.
it's not just taking, it's also investing in that network and being authentic and genuine and not just being a social climber,
Yes.
right? And when you have a little bit of privilege paying back into that network or bringing somebody else into that network, and there really are no shortcuts. You really need that drive and determination, and people have to be willing to start from scratch.
Yes.
Yes.
And so much sacrifices behind
Yeah.
whatever you all have done. It's endless, and we'll come to that.
I can still say that I'm still learning. I'm still sharpening my skills.
Absolutely,
Yes.
absolutely.
And in this culture and community, if you're not constantly refining yourself, you're done.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Every day is a
The
learning
day you
process.
stop
Yeah,
educating
absolutely,
yourself, you're
absolutely.
finished.
Yeah, just in general, always be a student. I think
Oh,
when you
yes.
get to that
Oh,
point
yes.
that I
Oh,
have
yes.
nothing more to learn, it's very dangerous because you
Yeah.
always have something.
And to have
more
that
to
servant
learn.
mentality, that
Absolutely,
you have
absolutely.
to give first, and not having to give in expecting a
Something
return.
return. Yeah.
Give unconditionally, it will come
will
back
come
in
back.
tenfold.
There are ways it'll come back.
And both
That's so
Anushay and I, we've seen it with our fathers. They've so much contribution, and we've watched them. We've grown up watching them contribute immensely throughout their life, and
Yes.
that's all we saw and learned
That
throughout
is
our
so
life.
true.
Let's move on to our next question. Start off with Anushay.
Yes.
Anushay, you were born and raised in Bangladesh, but came to the US as an international student at the University of Virginia. How would you describe your immigration journey? Do you ever think you would one day be living and working in America?
No, I didn't, but I did want it, and I did dream of it. But you know what? Nobody ever thought I was going to get into such a good school because I wasn't really a serious student. And then when I hit 9th grade, I became very serious. And that's really what matters. UVA changed my life, and getting to come to the US as an international student changed my life. When I was younger, my father used to joke that he didn't want to send me to America like he sent all my other sisters because he thought I would never come back. And I didn't go back. I did leave the States for a little stint, but no. I think going to UVA and getting a world-class education was a game changer for me. My mind expanded at UVA, and the other day my daughter said, "Oh, Mom, you're such an Asian mom." And I said, "I am an Asian mom."
And I'm proud of
I'm
it.
proud of it. And I said, "You have to take the same thing my parents told me." I said, "I don't care what you do in life. Be good in school and take your education seriously." I always tell her how hard it is even now for girls to get an education. So it was a huge privilege of my life that I had a father that not only believed in educating his daughters, but sending us abroad for American education, which is something he always, even now, he really advocates for and loves the American education system. So I think it was a game changer. And, I'm still very close to my college roommates who were my first friends in America. And they were the people who taught me to make your own money.
Oh my God.
Right?
That's
Not
amazing.
right? They didn't have their dads bankrolling everything. So I was like, wow, how exciting to make your own money, even if it was like little jobs on campus. So that was a real game changer for me because they taught me that yeah, in America you can make your own money and have a job.
That's how you gain your confidence.
Yes, making money is a game changer.
And success from one level to another, slowly.
Slowly.
And independence.
Speak a bit about
Independence, exactly.
Yeah, and what motivated you to go in the line of the media and what you are in the...
You know, I feel like the media stuff happened really by accident.
That's amazing.
I just wanted to be like...
It seems you're meant to be.
I will say that growing up, everybody always told me to either shut up or stop talking, and I was always forgotten. Okay, if I wasn't ready, like the whole family would just leave. So either they would forget me or they wouldn't wait for me. So I don't know. I guess I was always just observing everybody. I just wanted to be in the gender world, and it was really hard back then to. I eventually had to go to the UK for my master's in gender and development. They just weren't teaching it here. It was really difficult to work in the field of women's health and rights and be paid and have people take you seriously. So I fell into the policy and lobbying making world, actually, policy making and lobbying world in Washington initially. The media stuff happened later, and it's important because after 9/11 happened, all of a sudden, if you were just Muslim, it was like if you were a woman, you were a victim, and if you were a man, you were a terrorist. And then there was really no representation in American media. Nobody was kind of giving our perspective. And I think as Muslims, everyone just became very quiet. So I fell into the media world completely by accident, but I was really tired of seeing how Muslim women and women of color were portrayed in everyday American media. It really bothered me, and it was really offensive and insulting because even though I grew up in Bangladesh in the 80s and we had a lot of problems, I grew up with a lot of powerful women, and my mother is like a matriarch. So I was just like, this is so condescending and offensive, and I hated that everyone thought I came from some refugee camp or something. I hated it. It was so offensive. This is, I think, when you have a family background, you come in like, excuse me. Whenever I dealt with racism, I was kind of like, I cannot deal with this kind of racism. I'm too educated. I always say that for this level of BS. But anyhow, I forgot my point. But starting to work. Oh yes. So I started a blog. This is when like blogging was kind of happening. And I just started writing the kind of articles I wanted to read about women of color, especially like South Asian women, Bangladeshi women, Indian women, Muslim women. And it was unpaid for a really long time. Because when online media was starting, people thought that if you write online, it's free. And as soon as it started becoming income generating, I left my day job. Oh, this is some good advice. Don't quit your day job. Don't quit your day job until you have another source of income. So, yeah, I just remember the first time I got on TV, they just assumed that if you're a Muslim, you can speak on behalf of all Muslim women. Yes. And if you actually see the very first time I was on CNN, I didn't know they were going to air that interview, but I was talking to the anchor and I said, hey, I'm not the only modern Muslim woman. What the heck? I can't speak for like a billion people. And she was asking me, well, why don't Muslims condone more? And I said, we do. But it's not sexy to put an articulate Muslim on TV. It's better if she's in a hijab, covered up, in some house, and then we can all freak out about it. Yeah, exactly. Anyhow, and then one day I was in my kitchen, actually 2 days later, and I heard on CNN that Anushay Hossain, women's rights expert, and I was like, that's so funny. And then I was like, it's me! And there I was talking about how I'm so over Muslim stereotypes, and I thought my entire career was over. And because I was just like, oh my God, it's so embarrassing. Yeah, but and then my parents were like, oh my God, how can you go on TV and talk so unprofessional? But I was being my authentic self, which I think in our culture sometimes they don't always want that. And in America, what I love is be yourself and
encourage your authentic
self. And then how far hard work takes you. You will see it. You will see it. I love that about America. Your work will eventually materialize, and it's so satisfying to see that because it's a lot of hard work.
This is a culture where your mentors and your peers bring out the best in you, and which you even didn't know existed sometimes.
Yeah, you really don't. I mean, I actually dedicated the book to Bangladeshi women because they are the strongest women that I know. And I feel like if we rule the world, and can you imagine?
Yeah.
And people always say, oh, tumi Bangali, tumi ato American, you're so American. But I love that I'm Bangladeshi. I love it. I love it so much. And when people are like, oh, you know, in Pakistan or India, I'm like, I'm not Indian or Pakistani. My goodness. Okay, please. It's a big difference, and it's something I'm very proud of. But I will say that it's not really a part of our culture to be like, you go get them, girl.
Yes.
This is very American.
This is very American.
So maybe it's changing in the younger generations. I'm sure it is, but it's really great to come to America, and when you find those kinds of mentors that do that, like lifting you up by lifting me up, like it's a really powerful thing.
Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Anushay. I'll move on to Samina with the next question. Samina, real estate. Wow, you work 24/7. We see that. And how do you balance that with your life? And you have almost 20 years of experience. What makes you stand out from the other agents?
You know, Anita and I, we were just talking about this the other day, that the biological path and the career path go parallel with each other, you know. And we as women, we have to wear many hats. It's not just my real estate hat. I'm a mother, a daughter, a sister, you know, a daughter-in-law, friend. It's many hats.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, giving back to the community.
And role model for so many every time, yeah.
And all this, I feel, is possible only if you are super organized and you have somewhat, with the help of your mentors, mastered some of your organizational skills and time management. I would say big time management. It's very critical to have that time management skill and to always try to think one step ahead, that what's coming next, let me prepare for it.
Yes, right. This is so true.
And there were so many days I struggled initially where my kids needed me and I needed to be at an appointment, and sometimes the clients don't want to understand that you have a family life.
Oh, they don't want to hear it.
They don't want to hear it. And so the best way I gathered to do that, one day I was with my son and this client called and said, can we see this house in the next half hour? I said, okay, I'm busy right now at an appointment. How about I show it to you in 1 hour? And he said, that's fine. And he was okay with the fact that I'm busy with another appointment. I did not have to explain what appointment it is, and he was satisfied and we hung up. My son looked at me and said, Mom, you just lied to the client. You're not in an appointment, you're with me. And then I had to explain to him, you are my appointment.
That's very important too.
I had to
have boundaries.
I had to fit him into my appointment, that he is my appointment.
Absolutely.
And whether it's taking your kids to a doctor's appointment or going to a school event, those are all appointments that fit into my schedule today, along with my showing houses or going on a listing appointment to list a house or meeting a client. Whatsoever it is, it fits into my schedule as an appointment.
Yeah. And you can't do it alone either.
No.
Right? I mean, it really does take a village. I mean, right, you know, when, you know, you're at the point of your career where you're getting promoted or opportunities are coming, you're thriving, is right when your kids need you the most, right when you're, you know, they're at their most dependent. And so unless you have a husband you can lean in on,
the most important
you
thing.
can have a parent or good caretakers,
Childcare.
I mean, you really do need, or an administrative assistant who's willing to pick up your child from school so that you can make your meeting. And so, you know, learning.
It's a constant struggle.
Keeping a support network, a trustworthy, reliable network that you can lean into for help. And you know, I think, you know, we don't do it alone, right? We you know, whether it's a friend, whether it's a nanny, whether it's your husband, whether it's your mother, whether it's a trusted, you know, friend that is always there for you, you know, when you need. So
you can't do it alone, and ask for help.
And here I would say that we all three of us, I think we are blessed that we have very supportive husbands who not only help us with our work, but also encourage us to go to the next level. Real partner, very supportive.
Yes.
And it's very important to have, and I really appreciate that about our spouses.
It's two very important points that Samina made. First of all, yes, about your spouse, because as we know, most of we don't come from, it's such a patriarchal culture that we come from. Your husband is like, you are supposed to do everything for your husband, right? So obviously times are changing, but yes, it's a game changer. And
for them to appreciate that you're doing that for them, and at the same time wearing a different hat and taking your own career, your own identity to the next level.
Right.
Yeah.
And then eventually your kids also start to respect you for what you are and what you have achieved, and be proud of that. This is who our mom is.
Yeah.
And she's her own person.
Yes.
I love what you did with your son, though. It's such an important lesson in professionalism.
Yes.
This is something that has taken me forever to learn.
Yes.
Being professional. Because normally you did that so well, but I would be like, I'm with my kid, am I doing that? No, just say I can't make it. I have a conflict. Less information, the better.
Yes.
And that is the route to professionalism. I wish somebody had told me this like 30 years ago.
No, we all learned it the hard way.
Really? Oof. They don't want to hear all the details. You know, get to the point.
Yeah.
That's very American.
Absolutely.
I think in Bangladesh we'd be like, "Amar bacha shuri karbe."
Nobody wants to
The
understand
meeting
that.
is, yes, the meeting's over.
Thank you, Samina. I'll move on to Anita, and I would love to ask you, how was the practice of law and its power structures evolved for women? How has it evolved, especially minority women, since you started off almost 20 years back? And what advice would you give to minority women who are just getting started?
It's such a good question, Nyla. So, I think it makes me reflect 20 years ago when I first started, if you worked at a big law firm, it didn't look like the rest of the country. It looked very much like Wall Street. It was a lot of white men who came from, they were third, fourth generation, lawyers that had prep school pedigrees, went to Ivy League schools. Their fathers were lawyers, or they came from corporate America. And there were very few women at the top. Most women you saw were paralegals, there were admin support, there were your secretaries, and the few women that were at the top of the pecking order at the law firm where I first started, they gave up a lot to get there. Oftentimes they never had time to find a significant other or get married, didn't have children, really, were apologetic for being assertive. And I think things have really evolved, and I would say one critical aspect of that evolution is that corporate America changed, right? Mm-hmm. You see more women on boards. If you're a NASDAQ listed company, your listing requirements to get on NASDAQ require you to have board diversity. You see more women in executive roles at companies and management, and because of that there's a downward pressure on law firms to have diverse representation in terms of who you're hiring as your lawyer, right? So big law firms now are promoting and more sensitive to women because their clients, their big corporate clients, Fortune 50 companies, Fortune 100 companies are demanding it. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a powerful shift. And I would say the second shift from an immigrant minority perspective is that now we're seeing, second and third generation. I'm first generation. I came from, immigrant parents who, as Anushay mentioned, would have been just fine if I would have said, I'm not going to law school. Why don't you give me that arranged marriage to a doctor? They would have been just fine with that option. But now that you see second generation people like, me, people like, other Samina and Anushay's children, whose mothers and fathers are evolved and more willing to support careers, I think that's helped minority women think about going into law, not just getting an arranged marriage, or not just being a caretaker, or not just trading off their family name. I think you're seeing that. You're seeing that generation marry husbands who are supportive of their career. You see, women really being allowed to think outside the box, and I think that's helped and that's changed the trajectory of corporate America. I think that's changed the trajectory of the law firm world.
Yes.
I think it's still hard. It's still a work in progress. I think it's still, very difficult to be in a law firm or be in corporate America, because as we were saying, as Samina pointed out, your home life, is constantly coming into conflict with that chapter where the best opportunities are coming. And that happened to me as well. When my kids were young, that's exactly when my counterpart male colleagues were getting promotions. And
Yes.
I had to step back. I had to say, okay, I had to make a choice. I had to say to myself that, okay, my day will come, but for right now, I have to focus on my family. Maybe I wait a little bit longer for my promotion, because look, as career oriented as I am, I could be the most successful lawyer in the world, but
Yes.
you get one shot as a parent.
Yeah.
And, I didn't want to look back at my
Very
career
important.
and say, I'm this great lawyer, I was this great prosecutor, I handled all these high profile cases, I had all this access to power in Washington, but my kids are messed up, And so, you
Yeah.
want, I think so for me, I had to focus on my family. And there were times in my career where I went part-time, I cut back on my hours. I had to make those trade-offs because that was more important to me than my career. And then I tapped into my career, and I caught up with hard work. And like I said, for minority women, sometimes you have to work harder in a law firm. You have to seek out the mentors. There is no shortcut. Let your work speak for itself. Let your humility speak for itself. In law, I think people, talk a lot. They have big personalities. There's a lot of arrogance. But if you don't have the work ethic, the dedication, the judgment, the humility, then you're not going to earn the trust of your clients. You're not going to earn the trust of a presidential appointed chairman of the SEC who I reported to. And so I think you have to really bring all of those skills to bear, but you have to balance, you have to lean in, you have to seek out mentors, and you have to take risks. Not everything is about money, right? Sometimes you have to take a bet on yourself that it's going to work out, even if you take some time off to focus on your family, even if you give up the big law firm job to go in government, make less money. You have to be willing to take some risks on yourself and
Yes.
follow your instincts.
To wrap up, I would love to ask you, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Oh, that's such a good question, and one I've thought about many times. I've talked to my daughter about this many times. I think that, be a risk taker. I think I'm a huge believer in high risk, high reward. And as I mentioned, sometimes that risk means giving up money to make a decision that's right for you. Sometimes that means you take a break that you need. You unplug and you focus on your family, or you focus on a crisis with your parents, to get them through it. I think in the end, trusting your instincts on that, taking calculated risks pays off. As I mentioned, there is no shortcut to really be to achieve success in whatever line of work that you're in. You really, you need to balance the networking with the hard work. The networking can never be a substitute for the hard work. And eventually, if there's a deficiency there, no matter how much you're networking, it's going to catch up to you.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And so, and I think it's important to pay it back. That when you're so focused on your career and networking and making your connections, when you do make it, sometimes you forget that you have an obligation to pay it back to
Yes.
other women, to other
Very
minorities,
important.
to other
Very
people
important.
that do not come from
Yeah,
privilege.
you really do.
Use your power, use your platform to get their foot through the door. The rest is up to them, but opening that door, making that introduction
So
is
important.
so important. And it's really important to be a leader and be a mentor in that way, and not forget about that once you progress that ladder.
Yes, and that is so good. I feel like I should be taking notes. This isn't education. This should be a master class. But also not to do it, not like charity, and don't expect anything back. Do it. It will
Have
come
the
back.
abundant mentality.
Yes, it will come back to
Come
you.
back in some way.
And
It will.
also something that feels amazing is to circle back and do something for somebody who did something for you.
Yeah.
Yes.
That is the best. Who is older than you, who's been in the field longer than you. That is the best. That is the best feeling.
It really is.
Samina?
I would say what the younger generation or the next generation, what they have that we don't have is time. And take full opportunity of this time understand and really think about the dream that you have, where you want to be, and actually write your dream, because dreams, unless they're written, they don't turn into goals. You have to write your dream to make it a goal, and then try to achieve each goal one step at a time. There's a very good book called The Kaizen Way that I've read, and it's the Japanese way of baby steps, going from one step to another to achieve your goals, and then you're not overwhelmed. And I had a great mentor who helped me write 1-year goal, 5-year goal, 25-year goal. And he said that, mind it, debt is not in the agenda. So make sure you write your goals, because unless they're written, those dreams will remain as a dream. And then take one small step, focus on that, and try to achieve it one step at a time, because then otherwise you'll be overwhelmed. And just focus and move along every step of the process.
Very, very
So I'd like to turn the question around on you. I mean, I find it so inspiring that you achieved so much. You've been such a world citizen, and you did it all as a single mom, as a grandmother, with children. Came to this country later, as you mentioned. So what's the advice you would give your younger self in that regard?
There's a lot of things I feel flowed in because I was prepared for it. But then again, I never stopped learning. I did my MBA when my daughter was married. I did it in Sweden.
It's so inspiring.
I had to sit in Oslo board, and they said to be there, you don't have to be masters, you have to have an MBA. And I said, oh, I'm earning so well, and why do I have to be an MBA now? But I did it. I never sort of feared. Education, number one, and constantly trying to learn. I think 24 hours is never enough for me even today.
You stop learning, you stop growing.
Yeah.
And I never feel that people are younger who I'll report to that I can't learn, but I feel every day who I mix with, I have something to learn from each one of them. And I'm grateful for that, and I think opportunities I have had because I was ready. And it was the toughest thing when we were growing up. In Grameen, I was the only woman among 16 board members, and I was literally in my mid-30s. And they were 60 plus. And every time they used to say, you keep quiet. And I said, where have I landed? But then again, there were people who said that, we need fresh blood. We need to hear you. You speak up. So these are the small encouragement which kept me going. And my father. My father has been my mother and a father to me. I lost my mother when I was 12. So it has been he always saw me that I would make it. And
he believed in you.
He believed in me, and I never let him down. Right. So it was just always trying to make up. And I guess coming from a very enlightened family, we never had boys, we were 3 girls. And I always felt that I've worked with really, really extreme poverty women, and I've seen it. I've traveled their journey and the pain. I always wanted to empower women. That kept me going and going.
Right.
That no matter what,
the work never stops there.
Yeah, and coming from a privileged family, if I could get a lot of I have had a lot of obstacles in life which I overcame, and what are they going to do when they don't have help? I would love to be there when they don't even ask for it. And I think that is something I keep on going with even now.
It's amazing.
Anushay, what do you have?
I would say, and I just read this recently, and it was like such a aha moment, but that rejection is just redirection. I used to really just take rejection. My husband always tells me that rejection is not personal, but as a writer, I feel like it's incredibly personal. I feel like it's incredibly personal, but just part and parcel when you're working in the media world, and just when you're a writer, because people, are constantly rejecting you. And I think about all the people who rejected my book proposal, and how it really just takes one yes. But I also, because I used to get so devastated, just don't get devastated over it, okay? It's a redirection. You will always end up where you are supposed to. But the other thing I do want to say about female empowerment, which I think now I've become so empowered I forget, that when we were growing up, I had to hear every day, because we were 4 girls, and my uncle had 2 boys, that my father would have no one to give property to because, girls.
No inheritance.
Yeah.
And my dad's a favorite joke, which recently I have actually told him is not funny. He said that when my sister was born, everybody was like, firstborn a girl, good luck, that's great. And then my second sister was born, and they were like double the luck. And then when my third sister was born, they were like, something is not right. And then he said that when I was born, nobody even congratulated him because it was just an Artame, another girl. And everybody always laughed. And I'm like, that is not funny. But I just recently said that to him. I think he was maybe trying to deal with his own trauma. But so it's crazy to think how in one generation, what Bangladeshi women have become and done. I mean, women like Naila Appa is not a joke. I mean, to be the only woman in Grameen, Bank, which really put Bangladesh on the map, is incredible. So I'm actually humbled and honored to be here.
I feel
and to be interviewed by you.
I feel the same.
And when Nailapa came to me, that let's open this foundation together. Let's try to empower women globally. It was a no-brainer that she's achieved so much throughout her life. 18 years she served in the Grameen or more.
21 years.
21 years.
Capacity,
Yeah. But you were so instrumental in even getting the microcredit loan.
Yes, the village fund was
fund,
under,
which has
for
been
11 years.
emulated by
Yes.
by countries around the globe.
And we are doing that even in our
Even
foundation.
there's even one in New York.
Yeah.
And also to be in an organization for that long is not a joke. 2 decades.
But I was in different positions, and later on I would say in 10 countries replicating Grameen instead of like being in Bangladesh. But going back, it's all about you all and your leadership. But honestly, you all have inspired me so much today.
We inspire each other and we support each other, which is a big thing. I think that the next generation, and especially people from our culture, should understand that it is very important to help each other grow and push each other, encourage each other, that go for it, we are right behind you.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes. Don't view each other
as
as competition. Make it more about colleagues, a colleagueship and community.
Yes.
And one thing I've known, the humility you all share, and leadership has so much responsibilities because so many people look up to you. And that's where I think in a way it keeps you on your path.
Right.
To righteous ways and right ways and how to show people. And I hope the viewers learn a lot from that. I would like to conclude by saying every woman's success should be an inspiration to another. And we are strongest when we cheer each other on. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.